Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here today at the Fayetteville Public Library. My name is Jamie, and we also want to thank those that are joining us on the live stream. Before you leave today, please take a moment to fill out our evaluations on the back table. That'll help us with our future programming. And now I'm delighted to have Herman Boyd, President and CEO of Echoes and Footprints Incorporated, here today. Herman founded Echoes and Footprints following a 35-year information technology career at a multinational corporation, DuPont. After retiring, he earned a certification in sustainable tourism destination management from the International Institute of Tourism at George Washington University. Integrating sustainable tourism, digital engagement, and a passion for the significance of the African polyrhythmic beat in the music of the Americas led to the founding of Echoes and Footprints. And with that, here is Herman.
Thank you, Jamie. Wonderful.
We're great to be here. We're happy to be here. It's great to be here. Last week, we kind of did part of this session. So today, we're going to do kind of the same intro section again, but also we're going to add in some other digital aspects to this today. And so to that end, just to tell you a little bit about us, as Jamie said, we're a nonprofit organization based in Millsboro, Delaware. Sorry about that. And we're really focusing on amplifying the story of the African polyrhythmic beat and how that really led to the creation and formation of the music of the Americas. And when I say the music of the Americas, from your history class, that's everything in the New World. So that's what the music of the Americas is. And this is kind of an evolution over 500 years, and you'll see how the music has kind of evolved and moved into the mainstream from that point. So today, I'm going to do a light introduction to the beat, and then I'll talk about the music of the Americas. And then we have an immersive part of this that involves feeling and touching and really getting to know the instruments here. But also, we'll talk about some of the digital content we've collected and have on our website that we're making available to everyone. So a lot of the information you're hearing today, you can take a deeper dive into that information on our website. So kind of a couple things to remember as I'm talking through this today. There are 5 W's in this: who, when, where, what, why, and how. How did this happen? And those are kind of the themes that's going to play out today. So how did the music of the Americas happen? So with the African slave trade, the enslaved Africans was brought to what we call the New World, to the Americas, and deposited into the New World. Without their drums, without their kind of legacy of all, so when they got here, they really just had what was in their souls and in their minds. And part of that is how do you recreate that kind of legacy, that culture, that essence of who you are. In this, the rhythms they brought with them is kind of a polyrhythm. Poly means many. Many rhythms, more than one, I should say. And so that polyrhythmic beat got introduced into the New World, along with some indigenous sounds, those already native indigenous sounds, and harmonies from Europe. Those 3 things come together to create this kind of cornucopia of music of the Americas, and we're going to talk about some of those in just a moment. Syncopation is another little aspect of this. When you're hearing a beat, a polyrhythmic beat, sometimes there's a little accent between the beat that's kind of like not really part of the regular beat, but the little extra sugar they've thrown in there. Yeah. That syncopation helps move forward and drives the beat and give you a little bit of kind of something you hear and think, oh, that's interesting. You kind of a little dance in your step there. So that's what this syncopation does. So here we talk about who. These were the enslaved Africans coming from Africa. Most people think that most slaves came to the United States. In truth, most enslaved Africans went to Brazil. But as you can see, they were deposited along the whole kind of the Atlantic shore of the Americas. And this really kind of represents where they landed. There are 4 ethnic tribes or bloodlines that were really important in terms of who were those people. Bantu, if you've heard of Bantu, that's one ethnic line. Yoruba, the Dahomey, and the Karabali. So those four bloodlines are represented across the populations of the enslaved Africans. And as you can see from this map, they landed all across the Americas, and that became the essence of how this polyrhythmic beat kind of came to the Americas and built from there. Recognizing these four bloodlines, they kind of had to mingle and co-mingle and kind of go forward. And so it's not like one homogeneous group that came and moved here. They really represent kind of a mixture of these ethnic bloodlines. Oh, I failed to do one thing again. So, hang on. So this is Christopher Johansson. Christopher is the operations manager for Echoes and Footprint, and he's responsible for a lot of the digital content we're going to see today. Behind you is Sonia Board. She is the treasurer for the organization. So we're really taking this show on the road and talking to other people about this particular piece of it. Christopher.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon. So Herman was talking about the transatlantic slave trade and where it went from portions of West Africa to the Americas. And we're going to go a little bit further deep into that. So first, let's start with the transatlantic slave trade routes. These are actually the routes as gathered or documented by slavevoyages.org. It's a fantastic site that actually documents where and what countries, what ships, and what owners, where they bought slaves and where they sold them. And we encourage you to go to our website, echoesandfootprints.com. You'll see this on the history page. And then you can click on any one of these and it will go into greater details. So you can see on here, it's estimated that around 5.5 million African slaves were brought to the Caribbean during the transatlantic slave trade, which happened between the 16th and 19th century. And then specific ones that if you wanted to go to Bahia in Brazil, it'll show you this specific one. Or is it this one? Southeast Brazil, I guess. Yeah, so Southeast Brazil, you will get a number around that. So it's good to really peruse that. But we also want to be conscious of where people came from. And you can also get to that from our site under African ethnic groups. So a lot of people don't know that what are the ethnic groups. You hear things like Yoruba and Bantu and everything else. What we do is break them down into 4 different groups mainly. And I want to focus mostly on this one. So this is the Niger-Congo B language group, and it's a large ethnic group that has many different tribes in it, different sub-ethnicities or whatever. You may or may not know that you'll see the 3 kind of areas here. Basically where that red line is south is all more or less Bantu. And so it is the root language of all these ethnic groups. And so you'll know some of those words that are in our lexicon today. So like safari. Did we talk about that later? No, you took that out? Yeah, we discussed that last time. But like safari is a Bantu word. It's a Swahili word that means to travel. Or you hear something like Jenga, the game with the wood blocks. Well, that's a Bantu word, means to build. So if you want to learn more about these ethnic groups, I encourage you to go to our website and this page, which is echoesandfootprints.com/history, and just click on these different links to these different maps. Now, this is the map of the Americas. And so in this case, it goes directly to Afro-Brazilian music, and there's a lot of context here around the kind of instruments that are played there, and you're going to see there a go-go, which we have here. We have a tambourine, we have a shikri. You can listen to the rhythms. And in some, we have footage that we have recorded ourselves, like in Uruguay, when we went there under a U.S. State Department grant to document this. And we're going to talk more about this later. So, in other words, it shows how these ancient polyrhythms that came to the Americas in the 16th century and throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, due to the slave trade and to the 19th century, and how they combined with the polyphony or polyphony, phonic, or in other words, harmony that came from Europe in the 16th century. It combined harmony and polyrhythms in the Americas to create all of these musical forms that we're talking about today. So let me get you back here, I do believe. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Chris kind of alluded to some of the words, and I kind of streamlined the chart a little bit. But other words you may know is like gourds. You're going to see some gourds in just a moment. Yams, mojito. It's more will come to me, but very, very common words that we know. Simba, which means lion. Those things have worked their ways into our lexicon, but they came along with the enslaved African slave trade. So, as Chris was describing, the coming together of these three effects, I should say, the polyrhythms from Africa and the syncopation, the indigenous and native sounds of the Americas, and the European harmony and melody, really created something the world had never seen before, or ever heard before, I should say. And this new form really represented a new sound that really kind of evolved and really went around the world. And we see some instances of that in just a moment. But that was something that, if you think about classical music and then trying to overlay a polyrhythm beat into that, that became kind of the new order of things going forward. So this had never been done, and suddenly you have something that you've never heard being kind of released into the world. So, we did this last week, so we're going to play some polyrhythms. First of all, I want you to watch, and you will get to use your instruments on your desk. And just follow along. And I'm going to ask you to use your clave to try to mimic this beat. Okay, introduction to music. You got that part. I want you to watch this. You don't have to play this yet. Just watch it. First of all, it's very uncomfortable. You don't know exactly where to put your eye, where to put your ear, and like, how does this work? But what you're really hearing is two rhythms, played on different tracks, so to speak, at the same time. And once it comes together, you see how the polyrhythmic beat kind of really drives kind of everything forward, how it moves things forward, how it keeps you energized and moving. It's like being in your car, you're driving down the road and you're kind of tapping your foot and driving at the same time. Your foot is tapping, your hand is tapping, and you don't realize you're doing it. So that's kind of the discomfort created initially by the polyrhythmic beat. And this is another example. So if you can kind of separate in your mind the blue track and the red track. If you watch this and listen, you know, there are 6 beats happening on the blue side and 4, but at some point in time, they all hit together at the same time on 1. Then they start to kind of separate and diverge and coming back together again. What you're hearing is a polyrhythm. This is a 6/4 or 3/2.
And as you watch it, notice that at 1 and then at 3 and 4 are on the beat together.
And does a drummer try to do both of those beats?
No, that's the point.
Okay.
So go back to the hand exercise. That's why they're in 2 colors. They were playing separately, but when you hear it together, it's kind of unsettling and confusing.
Or driving.
Oh, driving. Yeah, yeah.
So in other words, one plays one part and the other plays the other. And that's what you'll see in the kendobe.
Like the drummer and the bass player.
That's exactly
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
That's a rhythm section.
I think I just.
So how's that play to that cockeyed reggae beat?
Well, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. That's the point that we're making. That reggae is a derivative of this
Yep,
confluence.
and there's a
of
map we
harmony
have. We're going to
and-
show you where this is. Okay. So you have a challenge. I'm going to pause this for a moment.
What are we doing?
So Chris is going to play the red part. You will play the white part.
Let's do it the other way. I'll play the blue part.
Okay?
I would play red.
You play the red. Chris will play the blue or white. Okay?
And I'm only playing it when that bops the red.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. Get your polyrhythm on right here.
That didn't sound like a very good bunch of sounds.
Well, but that's just a start. So we're going to take you on this journey, and so you'll see some things in just a moment. Okay. I'm not going to let you play this. I'm going to just go.
Go back to 6/4.
Okay.
What were we doing just then?
So you were playing on off. No, I was playing on offbeat because the bass rhythm was 1, 2, 3, and I was doing the offbeat. So 1. Can you go back to that one?
So I was playing the bass rhythm.
Yeah, the fundamental that people have to listen to. Boom, da da da, boom, da da da, boom, da da da. So why don't I do the 4, and if you can do the 6.
I'm going to do blue.
Correct.
Yes, ma'am. Ready? 1.
At times it sounds like rain on a tin roof, doesn't it? You know, like rain is kind of pattering on both sides. You don't know, but that's what it sounds like.
But could you hear it from? Did you hear it? Da 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 da.
That's an amazing visual right there. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen like that. And all this is on the website?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Oh, it will be once we get back. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, what their is going to be on that?
No, we're going to take our presentation and put it out. Parts of it out there. Yes. Yeah. You can just watch this one. This is a little more complex because all. This is a 4/3.
So can you put that up and pause it?
Sure.
So the important thing here is the red. So you're a musician. So this is in 3. It's not in 4, because the bass rhythm is in 3, right? So they're taking 4 beats and stretching them over 3 beats.
That's why it's elliptical.
Yes.
Yes.
It's elliptical.
Yes.
Right.
That's exactly
And-
right.
And so if you notice this, they will hit on just on the first beat.
Together.
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 So
Correct.
watch it now.
Yeah, yeah. I saw that. That's good. And that, to me, is very confusing.
1. And so that's the element. That's a polyrhythm. There are 2 rhythms going on there.
So that is something that you guys generated by computer
No,
graphics?
we found it
We found this on
online.
the web. Yeah. So,
Amazing.
so I mean, polyrhythms can be any combination. Generally, they tend to be 2 numbers, 2 beats that are not like equal. So you have an odd, kind of an odd sequence of them. So like, not that there's a such thing of 5/7 or 5/9 or something. I've seen one. I mentioned this before. And of all places, a Britney Spears song. Go hit me one more time. At the very beginning of that, it's a 16/9. I mean, could you imagine? Boom, 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 at the same time. So, I mean, polyrhythms can be a lot of different things, but that's tend to be this construct.
But it's more than one rhythm.
Yes, and that's right. There are 2 things going on. And that's going back to those hands. They were not the same color. They were doing different things.
And there was, or did I dream it? There was one that was more than 2, no? Or there only been 2?
No,
So far, only 2.
Okay, okay.
But you're going to hear some songs
Okay.
Yeah.
that are more
I'm
than
gonna-
2.
So now you kind of understand the basic of what a polyrhythm is. And that was kind of the introduction to polyrhythms. And we're going to kind of move into this music of the Americas that came because of that. Yeah, you want to do this one? Okay.
So we talked about this is a timeline. Excuse me. That's on our website, and we talked
And
about.
I'm not sure if it's his MySpace where it is or yours, but I can hear him a lot better than I can hear you. So I don't know what that's about.
Maybe. Brian, do you hear me? Okay. Yeah. Okay.
That's what you really need, them recording it.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't have it near my voice box, so there you go. Lessons learned, right? So we wanted to give this a timeline to see what is going on in the Americas and what's going on in Europe. Because we said at the beginning of the 16th century, in the 16th century, you have harmony coming out of the Renaissance in Europe, coming over to the New World, right? We have, due to the transatlantic slave trade, you have polyrhythms coming over. So we wanted to give, and this is on our website at echoesandfootprints.com/timeline. And you can see here, before Columbus discovered America, right, there were already First Nations here with their own traditions, ancient drumming, dance, song, and cultural traditions, as there were in Africa and in Europe, right? So the Renaissance begins in the early 1400s, well, mid-1400s or whatever, and that's where you see harmony, a simple harmony with just 2 voices, start to grow in acceptance. It started really in the 9th century, but that's earlier, right? So in the 1500s, first African slaves arrive in Hispaniola, which is now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, in 1502.
And so the key thing here, 1502, this is 10 years after Columbus landed in the Americas. So in 10 years, the first enslaved Africans were here. So it's been 500 years, of Africans in the New World.
So also in the 1500s, after the Renaissance, progression of polyphony or harmony structure grows into multi-part harmony, and we've heard 3-part harmony, 4-part harmony, 5-part harmony, right? So it really starts to grow. So it's getting more complex, right, and richer. But at the same time, it starts in the 1600s with the arrival first slaves that arrived in colonial America, although they're showing up in Brazil and the Caribbean before that,
Yes.
right? So they bring their own musical blend of religious European. What happens is they weave theirs together, polyphony and polyrhythms, or harmony and polyrhythms together, and start to create new sources of musical expression. So you have a harmony with polyphony, with many different voices, and you have many different rhythms come together. And that what is phenomenal, and they start to weave together. At the same time, in the 1600s, in the Baroque period in Europe, music gets more elaborate because it has more voices, right? But it does not have polyrhythms. So the expansion of the slave trade happens in the 1700s, and these are really still kind of separate. Europe and the Americas are separate. You'll see during the classical period, there was some kind of cleaning up of harmony. In other words, to put a convention to it. So, say that there was harmonic clarity and simplicity, right? But what's happening in the U.S. is the creation of all new types of stuff, including field music, African field songs, religious music, folk music, and it's not until the end of the 1700s that you have the first song of the United States that's not religious. That's a whole other story. And then in the 1800s, slavery comes to an end. In other places, and the U.S. was one of the last to do that. But you also see the creation of major orchestras and opera in recognition of these different forms, and they start to weave it into. And it's at that point with transatlantic travel, with ships and everything, things start to go back, and money. Go back to Europe and start in the Romantic period, creates these complex arrangements with more expressive harmonic language, right? And then we get in the 1900s, and two big things happen. Like Stravinsky and Schoenberg start to use the polyrhythms in classical music, which was kind of a scandal, right? Because they were just like, no, that's not what we do. We do simple, yeah. And you had the invention of the phonograph and the phonautograph to record, capture, and distribute music worldwide. So now yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when the
Blues show up as early as the 1700s. No, even before that.
Well, so the blues at that time really came out of a lot of, well, it was kind of work music, field music, and that was kind of designed to kind of get work done. But the blues became the kind of the backstory, so to speak, of, what am I feeling? It's work I'm doing. They have me working just to get the work done. And by the 1700s, the blues really began to take form. And by the 1800s, by the time all the countries in the Americas are free and the enslaved Africans, the blues kind of become parts of the lexicon in terms of how people feel.
take claim for it in the United States.
We do. And I explained that later on why that happened.
So the big thing then, 20th century, the 1900s come along, and there's all kinds of inventions for this music to spread worldwide, and most notably,
This guy.
Transistor radio?
yeah, a transistor radio. So in other words, it can be played one place and be broadcast more broadly. So the music of the Americas goes worldwide.
But also, it provided portability.
Yeah.
I could take this.
Accessibility.
That too.
Yes.
But suddenly,
Yep.
just think in the 60s, I had a transistor radio, and he listened to a song and shared it with my friends. Maybe they didn't have a transistor radio, but suddenly the portability of this allowed me to take this to school or whatever I wanted to do,
And then 21st century that we're in now, of course, the 2000s, you have things like streaming services, MP3s, the iPod, the iPhone, and you start to see different cultures start to sample others. So the word is going even further. Oh, that's the. All right. There we go.
Okay. Thank you for that, Chris. That's a very good explanation in terms of, you know, now kind of the secret sauce in all this is history and geography and human expression coming together. And as that goes forward, even with technology, you really begin to get more and more of this kind of new music spreading around the world. But just a little bit of kind of going back a little bit. How and what happened? What made this so relevant? The key thing was that as the enslaved Africans were in this new land, they became more self-aware. You know, the drums they had before and the sounds they had before, they wanted to replicate and repeat and carry forward those sounds. The celebrations they had before, they want to continue doing those celebrations and recognitions. Their spirituality, those things kind of became more and more important and moved into the foreground. And that whole self-awareness around art, music, culture really began to manifest itself. And you see a lot of that happening, you know, around the 1800s. And that gives rise to some other things that we'll talk about in just a moment. So Chris kind of alluded to this. Now listen to those beats. No, this is Montevideo in Uruguay.
No, this is Buenos Aires.
Buenos Aires, okay, across the river.
And the thing to look for here is, and you probably can't tell, but they're playing different parts.
Each of the drummers.
Yes,
Yes.
there are 3 different parts there. And
Even that festive
Carnival.
image, that's also,
That's Candomblé at Carnival. Carnival in Uruguay
okay.
is totally separate from the church. And it's 40 days long.
Wow.
Every weekend they have a event, a performance that kind of showcase something. Different bands, different communities, different areas.
That little picture and the big pictures from Uruguay.
Yes, yeah. And so, but what's kind of embedded in this is they basically decided to build their essence of their being back into their culture. Montevideo is a walled city. And so by day, you go into the wall, you do your work, all the other things. By night, you had to leave the walled city. And then in Montevideo, outside of the walled city, in the barrio there, Barrio Sur, they started to really hone and practice their culture, you know. And there's one aspect of this, tango, came from Montevideo and Buenos Aires. And tango is a Bantu word. We talked about Bantu. Tattoo. It's a box, a square room, a small area. And so they had to practice away from the peering eyes of the community. So far back into the barrio, they would do this, and that dance was born, the tango. The tango. Now, the tango itself is a very close, intimate dance.
But originally,
Well, it had to be because you only had a small space. So if you're dancing together and other people are dancing around you, it had to be close and intimate. And if you look at the lines of tango, it's very intimate, very sensual. Yeah. Another thing about tango, it's one of those dances that's performed often in Dancing with the Stars, the television show. So there are many dances on Dancing with the Stars that kind of came out of this culture. Cha-cha, merengue, yeah, the Charleston. All these things came out. Charleston.
wow.
The Charleston came from Charleston, South Carolina, my home state.
Wow.
Yeah. What's the wow of that, to your point, is all of this went with ships back to Europe. And that's how Europe got enthralled with the tango and others, because of, travel was happening, luxury travel was happening, and now this has kind of moved out of the barrio in Montevideo and Buenos Aires into Europe. And this is the exposure of what has happened with this polyrhythmic beat, not just the music, but the dance and the words we talked about.
So I'm not observing in that middle picture, can't really tell up there at the top, I do see black arms and stuff, but from Uruguay, were they indigenous indigenous, and then the slaves came in, and then they basically had a combined culture? And
That's an excellent observation. So up until maybe the early 1990s, it was kind of this separation. In Uruguay, the country had kind of an awakening, and they really wanted to recognize and include everyone as Uruguayans. And so it became kind of the thing to everyone to do, this candombe. So it kind of moved from just a certain small community or ethnic group or whatever grouping of folks. It became the national music of Uruguay. It is recognized as a heritage asset of the country. And so that's why it's good you mentioned that. That's why you see it played by all the people in Uruguay. Yeah. But the core of that came out of the drums were taken away. You could not exercise your religion or your spirituality. Your celebrations were barred, And over time, people want to reclaim those things. And as they got more and more kind of open with those things, it really became part of the culture. And that's kind of the model that follows around the world.
started there.
Not just starting there. Every place has their own version of it, But yes. That's an excellent question. I like that question. So, Uruguay is way down in the very lower part of South America. But it wasn't just happening in Uruguay. On this map, and I told you I'll come back to this, all of these different music forms.
What are all those?
Those are different music forms that's based on the polyrhythmic beat. There's your friend Reggae up there.
Oh, yeah, there's Zydeco and jazz.
Cumbia. You'll hear some of that in just a moment. Candombe we talked about. Tango we talked about. Samba from Brazil. In the United States, there's, of course, blues, and so they kind of evolved from this. Zydeco is the core from that. Champita,
North America?
the upper part of North America, then there's Central America and the Caribbean, and then there's South America.
But salsa's way up there in the northern.
Salsa has a funky history.
Salsa had kind of a shared history because of people movement. One theory is salsa gained prominence in New York in the Puerto Rican community. Of course, that went back to Puerto Rico because people have families there. And a lot of that traveled from Puerto Rico to kind of Colombia and other parts of South America and into Central America. So salsa is one of those things that really has kind of taken a different path, a circuitous path kind of throughout the Americas, the upper part of the Americas.
There's another theory that it started in Puerto Rico and went to New York.
Yeah.
And went to Colombia.
Okay, sure. So what did I see there?
And so the other kind of unspoken story about salsa in New York, it was brought about a Puerto Rican, included in the queer community, in the Puerto Rican community, brought into the clubs, and that's how it kind of started to move back and forth. So salsa has a very, very colorful but wonderful history.
Oh, they even have ska on there.
Guys on there, yeah.
So blues is right there in the Delta. That's,
Yeah.
Yep.
So blues,
So is that on the website?
I'm going to show you a map shortly, well, a timeline shortly. That's going to include the blues.
And yes, so we are building a database of all of this on the website. A lot of it's on there, but we're constantly adding content.
So in Brazil,
Yes.
I don't think it was ever perceived as a dance necessarily, but capoeira,
Capoeira, yeah.
and that was a self-defense thing, but they turned it into something like a dance that needs to be noticed.
So
Like the-
wonderful. This is great because there's an instrument of this too large to bring, the berimbau.
Okay.
It sounds like a very
Oh, yeah,
Asian.
they play that with the capoeira.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sounds like a kind of an Asian type instrument, but it's really kind of an interesting instrument. I love that instrument. Yeah. So yes.
Yeah, I saw a guy doing that when I was up in Tennessee, and I said, "What are you doing?"
Yep.
He said, "Come here, I'll show you." And we started doing capoeira. I said, "Wow."
And so to your point about in the United States, a lot of the music of the United States started in the delta of the Mississippi. I'm going to talk about Greenwood, Mississippi in just a moment, but
So when you picked up that transistor, the first thing that came to my mind on the radio was that King Biscuit radio show, was the longest running radio show in the world.
yes.
Yeah. because I'm going to that festival out in Helena
Oh, yes, exactly.
Montana?
No.
next month.
In
Arkansas.
Helena, Montana.
King Biscuit Festival in Helena, right there on the Mississippi.
Arkansas.
Oh,
Across the-
Arkansas.
across the
Oh,
river.
yes. I've heard of this.
Yes.
Well, I'm going just because I've been, yeah.
So I'm going to give you a little taste of a version of polyrhythm, okay? I'm going
Okay, Jackson.
I'm going to play this one because you know this one.
Well, thank you guys for doing this. I mean, this is just amazing.
I want you to listen closely. You may have to use 2 ears, so to speak, to hear these different polyrhythms going on.
Syncopation right there.
Okay, you can't get carried away here. But Chris pointed out something.
When was that video made?
Where?
When? I mean, how old is that?
It was made in the 80s, late 80s.
No, that's 90s.
Maybe 89.
I haven't seen her in ages.
Yeah,
I thought,
yeah.
well, that's cool.
So Chris kind of said, oh, that's syncopation. That was dun, 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 like there's a little extra sugar you add.
Doing it. They were all,
And, you know, it's not on the beat. It's just kind of thrown in there, and you kind of move to it. That's that little extra sugar or salt that's thrown in there. That, you know, perfect word.
1993.
So this is from Peru, festejo.
No, it's festejo, not tango.
I said festejo. But look what they're playing. Your cajon, there it is. Bongos. There's a cowbell here. So that too is a polyrhythm.
that's what you said about one of my churches.
Exactly.
That last one was from Puerto Rico?
No, it's
I don't-
Lima, Peru.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't want to play that one. I'll play this one. This is kind of interesting. This is cumbia from Colombia. You hear the polyrhythms in the background? And you see them, yes.
So, is that some sort of cultural harvest dance or something?
It's a cultural dance.
It's a cultural dance,
Is that what it is?
but it's not a harvest. It's a courtship. A courtship.
Oh, oh.
If you pay attention, the women kind of like, oh, no, and guys come, yeah, you want to give me your number? No, no,
I
no.
just saw the baskets. I was thinking,
Yeah.
Okay, it's cool.
But it's cumbia. It's a courtship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that what cumbia means?
That's, yes.
Okay.
Now in Mexico, they have a version of cumbia also. It's gonna. Oh, that one didn't work. I pressed.
Oh, they have a different version.
Nope. This is an operator error. Okay, I won't go to Mexican. let's go with Zydeco. Maybe that's gonna work here. Yep.
I like the vibe when I first came in.
Listen to the rubboard in the background. You know, so what's interesting about Zydeco is the introduction of the accordion into this beat.
Okay.
And you hear a lot of that sometime in the music from Mexico, that accordion. Yeah. But you know, you have a whole different sound that's coming from Europe, an instrument that's being incorporated as the music kind of evolves forward. So.
Yeah, you think of an accordion or a concertina. It could be Irish or it could be.
Exactly.
Where is it from? Germany. That's where it's
Yeah.
from originally. Yep. Yep.
So we'll kind of give you a little taste of, you know, we've talked about what is the beat and how to recognize it. And you've played a little bit of it. We have talked about the music of the Americas. And now I want to kind of shift a little bit and talk about the American experience. So you're asking about the blues. This is another timeline. It's a lot to read here, but I tried to keep it simple. 1900s, kind of ragtime became that first kind of breakthrough, early jazzy, bluesy thing, you know. 1910, the early blues, you were talking about that.
And what do they call it? Classical modernism. Is that more of a?
Where is that?
At the very top under
Yeah.
1910. Classical.
Well, I mean, that's where you're taking for the, you know, where you're adding polyrhythms to classical music.
Okay. So more of the European flavor.
Yes.
You know, so think about the quadrille from Europe, comes to Charleston, and then they started adding different flavors to it. So you have this classical modernism taking place in the quadrille. Around here, about the 1930s or so, my friend here, Robert Johnson, near Greenwood, Mississippi, allegedly sold his soul to the devil to be able to play the blues and play the guitar. That kind of became the launching point for what became blues and then ultimately rock and roll in this country. So it really kind of started around this period in terms of rock and roll. Around in the 30s, late 40s, Big Mama Thornton. She had a big hit. First female to have a major big hit. Yeah, Hound Dog. Absorb. Hound Dog. You ain't nothing but a hound.
And that was written by a woman?
She made it a hit, yes.
Wow.
Elvis re-recorded it, of course,
Yeah.
and it became a mega hit. But Hound Dog was a re-recording of the song by Big Mama Thornton. Bessie Smith, all those blues singers, you know. So that was kind of the foundation of what became the blues and what eventually spun rock and roll in this country. Big band swing, you know, all the big band swings of that period. And of course, we talked about the introduction of vinyl, and then my friend, the transistor radio in the 60s, 50s, 60s. And then 70s, it got a lot more progressive. 60s was kind of psychedelic rock, jazz, a lot of fusion stuff. 70s, continue that path. You start introducing early forms of hip hop. Motown was in the 60s. Reggae was big in the 70s. And you start hearing some EDM, electronic dance music. By the,
So is reggae, I mean, I know ska is similar but not, but I thought ska was popularized in the Caribbean before reggae was.
true, but this is the U.S. version. This is the evolution of the U.S. No, you're exactly right.
Origin.
Yeah. This is kind of the American, the U.S. experience.
We finally get there.
Yeah, exactly. And this is what you see in the United States. All these other forms I showed you before, they still are playing. We were in Colombia a couple of weeks ago, and they still are playing this music. So yes. But as it progresses through to where we are today, all of this is based on that early foundation that came out of the 1890s. And ragtime was kind of the first thing that kind of came out of there. You know, The Sting, the movie The Sting.
You think of Scott Joplin, right?
Yeah.
Reggae, I mean, ragtime.
ragtime.
It,
Where's this reggae ton?
Very astute. So, it kind of started in Puerto Rico. I'm not sure you listen to or hear much of the music, but you've heard
I've been to Puerto Rico and I've heard music in Puerto Rico.
recently Bad Bunny. You've heard of Bad Bunny?
Oh no.
Yeah, he's kind of the biggest star right now. You know, Daddy Yankee is another group that came out part of that. But reggaeton is kind of a little more kind of a, how would I say it? Yeah, it evolved from that, but it's a little more kind of Latin salsa dance added into that. Yeah.
So I could Google right
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Reggaeton has interesting history because about 3 years ago, maybe 4, it became so popular and it was going back to Europe. The Spanish government had to introduce a new word,
Oh, wow.
reggaeton. And it was kind of this yin and yang because, well, this thing is coming back from the colonies, but we don't really have a definition for it. They didn't want to accept it, but it's so popular, so
So literally in Spain, they coined that word.
they didn't coin it. They accepted it and added it to their language. It was already happening, like in Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So reggaeton is kind of the thing right now, you know.
Well, what about math rock? What's math rock? I mean, it sounds like something using mathematics and rock. What is that?
You know, can I wait to the end of this? Because I had to look that up myself. I'm like, what is it? But you can kind of see some of the imagery over here, you know, in terms of as the the music has progressed. These different things have happened along the way. Like Studio 54 was a big deal, made disco kind of a universal phenomenon. Then MTV came along. Now you have streaming services, you know. So the technology, I don't know whether it's leading or following, but you know, it's been part of the whole process. And in addition to that, this music has really kind of been reflected in major cultural shifts in this country. We're talking about the US now. So there's music kind of related to each of these huge cultural activities in this country. Let's just pick one. Let's pick one. What do I have here? That's kind of the end of the space age period, but you see the whole space references going on in that. Let's try here. Oh, I went the wrong direction. This is my happy fingers here. Sorry about that. Okay, maybe that one doesn't have anything. Yeah. This is in the 80s, around the time of the 80s recession. Yes. But this has fantastic polyrhythms in it. But each of these, not just music kind of continuing to stream, yes, it does, but as we have these cultural shifts, music started getting identified with, you know, different parts of the evolution of these shifts. Like, of course, the women's movement, Helen Reddy's and I'm Woman, you know, and other songs that came out of that. I Will Survive, you know, all those great songs that came out of that, that's kind of attached to a certain cultural phenomenon, kind of became part of our music kind of landscape. So we're going to shift gears here a little bit. This is kind of the immersive part of this. And what we're shifting now into is more like we're going to kind of deconstruct some of this and talk about what's happening. And Chris has an exercise he's going to go through that kind of deconstructs some of the music, and you can kind of hear it kind of in context, but also as it's separated. So nothing but percussion. Slowly, drums have been added. Here comes the vocal, the harmony. So in this demo version of Tusk, I really like it because it kind of walks you through the progression of what's happening here. It starts off with a very percussion being very strong percussion. Then you start hearing the polyrhythmic kind of aspect of it. Then the guitar drops in, and then the vocals are laid over it. And clearly you know the song Tusk, but this is a demo version of Tusk that most people don't know. And when you think about how they constructed the song that became Tusk, and when you deconstruct it in this way, you really can see what's going on, hear what's going on. Yeah, layered. Okay. Chris is going to talk about this part of it.
Sometimes.
Is it too much?
No, I just think I wish you could share this. I mean, I've got friends that really are musicians. I just like music.
So we have to tell them about echoesandfootprints.com.
I have cards up there. Take some.
So to make this more real to people, it's like they should take the songs they love and deconstruct them. And sometimes that can be difficult, right? When you're hearing, the vocals and the keyboard, the drums, and other percussion toys like this or whatever. So there's this great website called Fader, FADR.com, and it allows you to upload an MP3 of your song and to separate the parts. So we're going to do that. So with this, I want to stems here. So I've already uploaded a song, right? And I think you'll know this song. Vicki Sue Robinson did this in '77, and then Gloria Estefan did it within the last 20 years. But if you listen to this song, there's all kinds of polyrhythms, harmony, and also history in this song. So now we want to separate it. And I want...
So you can just do this on a little laptop.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
As you say. So I'm thinking like this, I will appreciate
I want the stem types. Stem splitter, here we go. I did it earlier. Yeah, let me upload a song, turn the beat around. So notice it's uploading, it's checking the audio, and now you'll notice now it's stemming. Do you see that? Yeah. Okay, so give it a second. It's separating the vocals, the keyboards, the bass line, and the percussion. So if I play it like this right here, it's all together. It'll keep stemming. Hold on a second. Okay. Okay. So now you'll notice over here that these are the vocals, right? Because it's a microphone. This is the bass line, a bass guitar. This is the percussion on the bottom. And then the filler or the midline, the melody is really here in the keyboards. So I'm going to turn this on, and I'm going to start taking parts out. Right? And just watch. We got a bit here before the vocals come in. All right. Now, if I don't want to hear that, if I don't want to hear the keyboard, I turn it off. So you can see here how the percussion and the bass are driving the song with different rhythms. All right. See, do you hear the different rhythms in that? So
Your feet are hearing it.
So now we're gonna turn that. What else did I turn up? So now what I want to do is I'm going to turn off the percussion. Yeah, it's not as complex, full, and if I turn off the bass line tone. It's not full. This is where this was not seen before, was not in the human experience before.
In the sound room with the guys that were technicians that controlled the music.
Yeah. What I mean is that in the course of human history, you don't hear this. I mean, so we add in the bass line. And I put in the midline back there. No. Oh, single multi, I'm sorry.
So what does the M and the S signify?
Single or multi? You can
Single
mute.
multi.
Yeah, mute. I'm sorry, it's mute
okay.
and solo.
Solo and mute. Okay.
I want to turn the mute off. So now, let me take the vocals off and see if this song stands on its own, right? Right? So it's this mix of stuff that makes the music of the Americas.
But you hear all the polyrhythms in this now?
Da, 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 da. Brian, are you able to hear this? It's good? Okay, good. Okay. So there's infinite ways to play with this. This is free. You have to create an account, but you can only do, I think, 5 songs at a time, so you would have to delete one. But
Wow. And what does that FADR stand for?
like fading in music.
Yep.
The mnemonic I can remember, fader.
So all of that is really getting me to the point of talk about all these instruments. I'm going to get there in just a second. But this is our website, echoesandfootprints.com, and then Discovery. We have on our website, as you can see, a little breakdown of instruments, words, features, what is that? Festivals. Museums, thank you. So we try to capture all this digital content that's related to this music and just put it out there and make it available, kind of in one place. But also, we've started to assemble some playlists of those songs that you saw on the map. Each one of those, we pretty much, I guess we're like 70% through, creating a playlist of all those different forms. Yeah.
So you can go to musical styles, and give you a list of musical styles. You click on cumbia, and it will direct you to a Spotify playlist where you get 5 or more songs. Right, Herman?
Yes.
Like
So
5.
this is, the website's, as we speak, is being developed, because there were things that were on there, I saw, that aren't on there yet.
Correct. There are some things. I mean, it's developing. I mean, we have a grant from what is more or less the National Endowment for the Humanities to be able to digitize this because people really don't have access to it.
One of the issues that kind of led me to this is like, I knew this was going on. I kept searching for this kind of information, and I couldn't find it.
So you said, I'm going to create.
There you
Yes,
go.
that's exactly what happened. Some other things, just in terms of your local library, there are things you can do, and I'm going to talk about these things in the context of instruments, like grow your own gourds. In terms of grow your own gourds, this is a hero, some people call it, and I mean, you've seen this, so you know how to play this, but you heard that sound 3 times in different songs, 3 different songs. But it's nothing but a gourd, and you kind of hash it out there. And so a couple years ago, I grew some gourds. And not one, no, this one came from Cuba, but I grew some. And with the intent of, grow your own music. You dry them out and you kind of make shakers out of them. Or you can make these type of things, or other types of things. Yeah, birdhouses. Many people make birdhouses out of these things.
Ladles, bowls.
Yeah, dippers, all those things. But the key point here is when the enslaved Africans and their descendants were here or in wherever, they could not go to Best Buy or wherever to get an instrument. So they made these things, these local things. What you see here, everything here is pretty much kind of a natural element. And I'll talk a little bit about that in just a second as soon as I finish this, okay? That same type of thing is, how do you think about this music in context of history? I showed you the cultural references in the United States. You can think about history in terms of the space age. What music was tied to the space age? How does that relate? How does music, when you hear music from the Vietnam era, you know it. When you hear disco music, like, 70s, you know it. Those cultural kind of icons are kind of branded into our brain. And that's what that music has done. How do you connect music to different types of exhibits? You talk about the event you're going to today, the International
Festival.
Festival?
Oh, yeah, the International
Yeah.
Festival. I was thinking about that word that I made up, or that phrase I made up.
Yeah. Yeah. But, how do you connect the music to that? Those different cultures coming together, making music that you really enjoy so much. Even for young kids, crafts, you can make your own shaker. You just get a little bottle, put a lid on it, put some rocks in it, put some beans in it, put some beads in it, and you have a...
Toilet paper roll.
Exactly.
Yep, yep.
In Tulsa last week, we had an impromptu kids parade. They saw these and they just kind of picked it up and started playing and marching around the library, So it's kind of interesting. And then the last thing here is the digital resources. This is available. We're making it available on our website. And if you want to do a deeper dive into that, that's what it's for. And tell your friends, first of all. Yeah. So I'm going to make a little shift here, talk about the instruments. So,
Preview earlier.
and you can come up and touch them. Come on up.
Yeah, well, I did earlier.
Yeah, okay.
Play with stuff.
So you asked me about, I'm sorry, go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead.
You asked me about this flute-looking thing. This is from Colombia. It's called a gaita, G-A-I-T-A.
Oh.
It's like a flute, but it comes in pairs.
It's like a
male.
recorder.
It's like
You
a male.
play them together?
No,
Oh.
two people play them.
Yeah.
But you play them,
Oh, okay.
I guess, together. And this is the female version of it. The female one has 2, the male version has 5.
And that came from Colombia?
Brand new. We just picked them up 2 weeks ago.
And what's their origin? What's that about? I mean, they're
The-
obviously a wind instrument,
It's a wind instrument, like a flute. It's a wind instrument.
and they play them together.
Yeah, and on this particular one, this black part, is made of beeswax
Okay.
and charcoal.
Wow.
Originally, they would use the quill or the feather of a peacock to make this mouthpiece,
Okay.
but you can't just go around killing peacocks all over the place. So what they use now, this is the cover for a syringe. Yes.
Really? Well,
Yeah.
that's pretty resourceful.
But again, this is kind of the history kind of repeating itself because the original enslaved Africans and indigenous populations, they didn't have access to, this type of stuff. So they used what was available. I'm not a musician.
So why do they have a lot of syringes?
Different question.
I'm thinking, I don't want to know that story.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, every society has,
I mean, I can't
Oh,
say.
it's more like the embouchure is more like a flute.
Yes.
Yes.
It's not like a.
No.
Okay.
Think about that sound coming from the high Andes, and that sound being incorporated. Thank you, Chris. Into this polyrhythmic beat. As you know, this is the
A jawbone
the
of
jawbone
an ass.
of a donkey. But this is the modern version of it. Yeah.
And that,
Oh my gosh!
yeah.
But-
Yeah, because I've seen them before. I thought, what are they doing? What are they?
So you heard the modern version, but that's what it originated from this. They found donkey's head lying around, dried out. The more it dried, the more loose these teeth became, and it became a shaker.
Okay.
But-
they
and-
probably rub the things together like that.
Yeah.
Quite a bunch of stuff for that.
This, say it this way, in Cuban leaf they say it this way. But you have a modern version of I'm not good at saying that, but you know, you can play this in a lot of different ways, you know.
They got range stick, so that's a range stick.
Yeah,
huh?
I'll get there in just a moment.
Okay.
This is a go-go from Brazil, like two bells joined together. You know, you can play this. You squeeze them together. You can mute the sound a little bit. You know, or yeah, exactly. Of course, you know what a cowbell is,
Yeah.
and
Got one of my cake.
but in Cuba they play. You kind of hold it with the open it out, but on the edge you play it on the side of the stick, not the front of the stick. You know what these are? Yes, there you go. Now this is just a shell version of a shaker.
And I was asking earlier, because I have something like this.
Yeah.
I believe it was webbing from some sort of spider egg casing.
Okay.
Well,
And I don't know what and how they would have collected them, but they were like really soft, but there was something inside of them shaking again.
Shaking these, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you played a ring stick before?
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't have to tell you about that.
And we've also
This is
made
from
those with the kids. We made rings.
exactly. That was from Peru. We talked about this.
And these are Mexican.
Yes. This is old. This is new.
Yeah.
You know, and this one comes with a little shaker element also inside of it. And then, of course, this is another. You kind of hold it and shake it. You want to get the sand or the beads to kind of strike on the side there.
So these are pretty thick gourds, actually.
Yeah. You know what maracas are. We talked about the
Yeah, yeah.
kalimba.
kalimba. We talked about the cajon.
Yeah.
And
Start pulling out all my fun stuff.
yeah, good. We talked about the slit drum.
But that.
This a caita.
Guy.
Caita.
Cajita, no, turn it
Cajita.
around.
What is it? Where's it from?
Peru.
Peru.
Okay.
That-
C-A-J-I-T-A. So this, what is it? Caita means.
And there's like a little box with a little
Oh,
knob
perfect.
on it.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly what it is.
Okay.
Until the Catholic Church decides we're going to convert you, you have to go convert to Catholicism, and here's your collection box. Put your coins in there. And okay, outside of the wall, here's the collection box. It becomes my little musical percussion instrument.
Because their drums were taken away from them.
Oh, sure. Kind of like in the capoeira stuff. They couldn't let 'em
Exactly.
do their
All of
little-
that's the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
That's cool. Can I touch that?
No, you can play it. Go ahead. Touch it, play it, do anything.
So it's a collection box that they created. Yeah, we're gonna collect, all right. I got your collection.
You can rattle around the side, inside of it together. Exactly. Exactly.
Dun,
All
dun,
of that.
dun, dun,
All
dun,
of that.
dun.
All of that is true. All of that is true.
All
Yes.
of that
Yes.
and more.
And more.
Well, that's pretty cool. I've never seen that concept's really kind of fun.
Yeah. This is a balafon.
Card I can have?
No, marimba.
This is a balafon. It's the kind of forerunner to the marimba.
Like a hand version or a baby one or something?
Well, of course, they didn't have access to everything. This is some type of wood, of course, and bound together.
Oh, there's gourds underneath there.
So they are the resonators.
Yeah.
So instead of the
That's
sound,
beautiful.
they push the sound back out.
Sure, that's
Yep.
beautiful.
So,
Where'd that come from?
Usually, so it's an ancient instrument from Mali,
Oh.
but it's popular in Ecuador.
Ecuador. It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah, I saw a bunch of fun stuff on Ecuador, but I didn't see that.
That, yeah. It's along the coastal area, but yes. And of course, you know these things, these shakers, right?
Yeah.
and this is the modern version
That's
of
the
that.
modern version of it.
Yeah. These are just beautiful to look at.
And you can see those are made out of shells.
Yep, you got it.
There's a million and one ways to play that.
Yep.
Well, these are all very cool.
And this one, you know, you can play it the same way, but versus the modern tool, you know?
Let's go to the International Festival.
Okay, and you know the steel drum, right?
I do, and unfortunately, I let my friend, well, I sold it to her, but
Do you know the story of the steel drum?
It was turtle shells on the inside, and they turned them inside out, and they were playing in the Virgin Islands or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, so
That's one version of it. Let's talk about the real version.
so
Chris.
the thing is, this is another case like the
Oh,
Dutch.
steel drums. They were actually steel drums.
They're actually steel drums that held oil.
That's right.
But here's the thing: is the Dutch Shell Oil Company, Shell.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons they were set up was to traffic slaves, right? But they weren't very good at it. They weren't very good at the agriculture part of it. So they tended to take islands and stuff in the Caribbean that had oil. And so that's where Dutch Shell Oil
Off the
Company
coast
really
of
comes from.
Venezuela.
And so since, again, the African slaves had drums, the Dutch didn't like it.
Resourceful, they were a bunch of metal drums.
Well, they did, no, the wooden drums with the skin head on or whatever were taken away from them. So and so since they worked in the oil field and they were putting oil in cans, they made their own instrument.
I mean, I've seen what is it called? The Philharmonic
Yeah.
Steel Drum
Yes.
Band.
Yeah.
I've seen them. I don't
Yep.
remember if they were from Denton, Texas, because that's where I used to live. Was in
Yeah.
Denton, Texas.
Okay, north of
Texas
Dallas.
State.
Is that where they were from originally? Because I remember seeing them a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of music in Denton. I mean, yeah.
So there's 500 years of music.
Is it
in,
like a progression?
no,
Oh.
no.
No, they're grouped
They're kinda
together
grouped-
where
Okay, okay.
they're
Past and present.
the old version and the new version.
Yeah, past and
right?
present.
The
Okay,
old
yeah,
version
yeah,
and
yeah,
new
yeah,
version.
Yeah.
Old version, new version.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so FADER or FADR.
yep.
FADR, and then I got the actual website, and it'll be updated or whatever as time goes by.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot of good stuff out there now.
Yeah, and that what you were showing is at the beginning, literally like the trade,
Yes.
slave trade.
Slave trade, the roots.
That's actually an interactive part. I mean, you can click on it and then go to those different sites.
Yes.
Yes.
It goes. It's on Google Earth, and we created it.
Wow. But
Yes.
I find it on here? Or-
Yep, you'll
Yes,
find it
it's
on
the
there.
website.
Well, like you said, you didn't see anything like that out there, so you created something like that.
Yes,
And
indeed.
I've still been looking. It's like finally, I'm like, I just have to keep doing this, you know.
Well, thanks.
Okay. First of all, thank you. And there, folks online, thank you. I know this is 100 miles per hour, but we covered a lot of material and we kind of right on time here. So thank you very much. And Brian, I want to hand it over to you. We're good.